We're here today to talk about flood insurance claims process and whether the current structure is fair to homeowners like Doug Quinn and his family. And looking around here, certainly I'm shocked and saddened by what I see, because it's unconscionable that 21 months after Sandy, there are still homes like this leaving a family displaced. Now, Doug and his family have been kind enough to invite us into his home so that we can dramatize and show the impact that flood insurance issue is having on families in New Jersey. In fact, it might surprise you to know that despite our relatively modest population in a national context, with more than 240,000 flood insurance policies, New Jersey is fourth in the nation in total number of flood insurance policies. That's why when the Biggert Waters Flood Insurance Reform Act of 2012 was about to create a man-made disaster in the form of skyrocketing and unaffordable premiums, I authored legislation that put a stop to the most egregious hikes. My Homeowner Flood Insurance Affordability Act passed Congress overwhelmingly and was signed into law by the President in March. It restores common sense to the rate structure and prevents premiums from rising too quickly each year. But despite that being a victory for the people of New Jersey, we still have a big problem to tackle. That one in the form of homeowners not getting the insurance payouts they deserve and need to rebuild and fully recover. Now, I heard from countless constituents who told me similar versions of the same story that Doug Quinn told me. People who did the responsible thing, faithfully paid for flood insurance for 10, 20, 30 years, never had a claim until Sandy devastated their home, only to find out it wasn't enough. They assumed since they had insurance that they would be made whole and have the resources they need to rebuild. Well, obviously that's not true. They survived the wind and the rain and the storm surge, leaving their homes flooded with standing salt water, only to face another nightmare like Doug did, this time in the form of the flood insurance claim process. As Doug said when he contacted my office, and I'll quote it, "I was in my home the night the floodwaters rushed in. I waded out through waist-deep water at midnight to escape while electrical transformers exploded and houses burned down." That was the easy part. It's the year and a half since then that's been the tragedy. Despite being responsible and paying flood insurance premiums for years, despite getting the maximum coverage of $250,000, and despite receiving estimates that showed up to $254,000 in damage, Doug received only about $90,000, a third of what he needed to rebuild. Now, he hired a public adjuster who he had to pay for out of his own pocket to challenge his initial estimate. But despite the public adjuster uncovering significantly more damage, the insurance company paid only 5% of what was discovered. Now, I think if you look around here, you can figure out that $90,000 worth of damage this is far beyond $90,000 worth of damage. And that's not going to help Doug or his family get back into their home. Common sense tells you that it's just a drop in the bucket of what it will cost the Quinn family to rebuild their home and their lives. But like most New Jerseyans who are tough, proud, and resilient, Doug refused to give up. He filed an appeal directly to FEMA in January, hoping that they would right this wrong. But unfortunately, to this very day, over 6 months after filing the appeal and 3 months past the deadline that FEMA under law must respond to appeals, Doug has yet to receive a definitive answer. It's simply unacceptable. Now Doug has been forced to take his fight to court in order to preserve his legal rights. Doug's never sued anyone before in his entire life, and he's not too excited about the prospect. Doug is just one of many New Jerseyans who are going through a similar nightmare. The fact is that the entire claims process from the initial filing to the way the claim is processed, to the appeal process, is tilted against the homeowner. While FEMA needs to protect the taxpayer and prevent waste, fraud, and abuse, they also need to pay at least as much attention to protecting policyholders and ensuring that they are treated fairly. That's why I'm chairing a hearing this Wednesday to get some answers from FEMA. Unfortunately, as the hearing I think will show, FEMA has set up the process to prevent overpayments, which has resulted in countless homeowners being lowballed. Perhaps it's an unintended consequence, but it's the reality. Homeowners like Doug are getting insurance checks that are far less than what they deserve. There must be a balance between protecting against overpayments and shortchanging hardworking families. The process must be fair, and I believe it all can be achieved if some common sense reforms are put into place. And that's exactly what my hearing on Wednesday will focus on. How can we ensure that disaster victims are adequately and appropriately compensated by their insurance policies? This isn't some abstract issue. It's a critical issue that's affecting the lives of real people like Doug and his family. After all, New Jersey is a peninsula with 130 miles of water, coastlines, and rivers intersecting almost every possible turnpike exit. Affordable, accessible, and robust flood insurance is critical to the prosperity and economic fate of the state. And the stakes are simply too high to get it wrong. And just like when I heard about flood insurance premiums skyrocketing and making it impossible for people after having faced Sandy, I went to work. We had hearings and exposed what was wrong with the process and achieved the legislative result. It's my intention to get to the heart of this, what needs to be changed, and get a similar result as well. Let me thank him again and his daughter for allowing us into their home, for sharing their story, which is only one of hundreds across our state, and asking to say a few words. Doug Quinn.